Access denied. Access granted. Access granted. Access granted.
Hello guys, welcome you all to this new video. Today we will simplify the concepts of database and DBMS. So let's start the video. Database is about data, so before we see what database is, we will see what is data. Data is simply information about something like, for example, your name, your age, your height, your weight, mobile number, etc. So basically this is information about you. That means this is data about you. Let us consider another example, say mobile, so company who built the mobile, price of the mobile model name, information about storage, battery backup, processor, etc. So this all is the data about the mobile. Data can be in many formats, like numbers, texts, pictures, audio, video, etc. So now we will see what is a database. The definition states that database is a collection of related data stored electronically in a systematic manner. So let's simplify the definition. It is a collection of related data. That means if we consider a college, there will be data of courses, teachers, students, etc. which will be related to each other. There will be a particular teacher teaching a particular course to students. There will be students taking different course. So to make a database of a college we need to collect all the data about courses, teachers, students, etc. which will be interrelated with each other. Stored electronically in computer system. This means data is stored in computer system in electronic manner. It is stored in data servers. For example, before we had to fill a paper form and submit it by going to the college. Nowadays you need to fill an online form to apply in a college. That means your data filled in online form is stored electronically in college database. In a systematic manner. In database data is stored or arranged in systematic manner. Data is stored in tables, in row and column format. Data is not stored anyhow. Let us see one example of database. So in this example we have considered a small database of a company. There are two tables present in it, one is department table and another one is an employee table. These are the attributes of the table. For example, if we make a table of students, then roll number, name, class, division will be its attributes. These are the rows of table. Each row is one individual record. These are the columns of the table. One individual record in table is also called as tuple. Now we will see what is DBMS. DBMS is Database Management System. So basically it is a system used to manage the database. We users interact with the database with DBMS. When you have a database you need to manage it, like you need to insert data, update the existing data, delete unwanted data. You need to make sure who has access to the data. This is all done by using the DBMS, that is Database Management System. Control access. With DBMS we can decide who can access the data and how much of data can someone access. For example, if there is a college database, then each student must have access to only his or her own data. On other hand, teacher can have access to all students' data. This can be managed through DBMS. Manipulate data. If we want to insert new data, or update existing data, or delete unwanted data, or any other operation on the database, we can perform using DBMS. Representation of data. The data stored in the database is very well defined using DBMS.
In present time, every company generates and collects data. So to manage their databases, these companies possess database system. Let's take the example of Flipkart. Flipkart collects a huge amount of data, and to maintain and make the most out of that data, they use a database system. Now we should have a look at what really is a database system. Database system. It comprises of two elements. One is a database and another is a database management system. If we talk about database, it is an ordered collection of information stored and read electronically from a computing system. For example, Flipkart. Flipkart stores data of its customers when they log into their account, what products they search for, their browsing history. This all data is stored at a server as a database. And further, database is also of two types, structured database and unstructured database. Structured database is where we can store data in a particular structure, whereas for unstructured data, there is no particular structure to store data. For example, web page, which is a collection of images, videos, text, which has no particular format, is a form of unstructured database. In fact, today 90% of the data on the planet is unstructured, whereas structured data is stored in a particular structure, that is tables. And the best example for structured databases is Relational Database System, RDBMS, which stores data in form of relations, that is tables. And if a user wants to access the data or want to perform some operations on the data, DBMS is the entity which allows users to perform different operations on data. And to perform these operations, we are available with different versions of database management systems like MySQL, SQLite, PostgreSQL, and Oracle Database. So now we will see what advantages DBMS has through which it has replaced the flat file system. It doesn't mean that the flat file system is not used now. Let's see a scenario. In the 1970s, the data was stored in flat file system and can be accessed there only. Like in our laptops, we also get a flat file system which is inbuilt to be operated by operating systems with drives like CIFS, NFS, and in these drives, data is stored in the hierarchical form. So, what was the need for DBMS? In today's time, we use client-server architecture. Due to this architecture, not only you have access to your data, but if you want to give access to different persons on the planet, you can. Now, we will just have a look at what client-server architecture is. In client-server architecture, the data is stored in a centralized location and the users from across the world can access the data. Here, flat file system can't be used. To fulfill this purpose, we have to use DBMS. The reason being is when we search for data, for example, a particular product on Flipkart, it will show the results in seconds. But if we have to search the same product in flat file system, we have around 50 GB of data of products. And when we use DBMS, it has stored the 50 GB data at Flipkart server. Now, user will just write a simple query through SQL and get the data about the particular product. Searching is fast and memory utilization is efficient. And not only this, when we have to search for a file in flat file system, we should know the attributes of file like its location, name with the metadata. Metadata, it's the data about the data, that is, data about particular file. But in DBMS, user does not know where data is stored. We just send a request and the request is sent to server and we can access the data. Now we will see why DBMS. And the first thing we will see is concurrency. Multiple people access the data at same time. For example, when you are accessing the application of Flipkart, there are multiple users who are accessing the application and searching for the same product. If it was based on flat file system, it won't be possible. DBMS has protocols for concurrency. Security. Security also known as role-based security. If we have data and to access that data, different users have different access. This is role-based access control, whereas flat file system is operated by operating system which has no role-based security protocol and particular data is visible. Data redundancy. It means duplicacy in file system. We can store same content with different file names in flat file system, whereas DBMS has protocols and keys to tackle these problems. That's why DBMS is used for client-server architecture. Now, we will see the components of DBMS: hardware, software, data, procedures, and database access language. Let's have a simple diagram to see how all they fit together to form a database management system, and let's dive into these components. Hardware. When we say hardware, we mean computer, hard disk, input-output channels for data, and any other physical component involved before any data is successfully stored into the memory. When we run Oracle or MySQL on a personal computer, then the computer's hard disk, our keyboard using which we type in all the commands, our computer's RAM, ROM all becomes a part of the DBMS hardware, software. This is the main component as this is the program which controls everything. The DBMS software is more like a wrapper around the physical database, which provides us with an easy to use interface to store, access and update data. The DBMS software is capable of understanding the database access language and interpret it into actual database commands to execute them on the database. Data. Data is that resource for which DBMS was designed. The motive behind the creation of DBMS was to store and utilize data. In a typical database, the user saves data in present and metadata is stored. Metadata is data about the data. This is information stored by the DBMS to better understand the data stored in it. For example, when I store my name in a database, the DBMS will store when the name was stored in the database, what is the size of the name, is it stored as related data to some other data or is it independent? All this information is metadata. Procedures. Procedures refer to general instructions to use a database management system. This includes procedures to set up and install a DBMS, to log in and log out of DBMS software, to manage databases, to take backups, generating reports, etc. Database access language. Database access language is a simple language designed to write commands to access, insert, update and delete data stored in any database. A user can write commands in the database access language and submit it to the DBMS for execution, which is then translated and executed by DBMS. User can create new databases, tables, insert data, fetch, store data, update data and delete the data using the access language. Now we'll see types of database management systems. We have quite many databases, but we will discuss few. First is hierarchical model. This type of DBMS employs the parent-child relationship of storing data. Its structure is like a tree with nodes representing records and branches representing fields. The Windows registry used in Windows XP is a hierarchical database example. Network model. This type of DBMS supports many-to-many relations. It usually results in complex database structures. RDM server is an example of database management system that implements the network model. Relational model. This type of database defines database relationships in the form of tables. It is also called relational DBMS, which is the most popular DBMS type in the market. Database example of the RDBMS system include MySQL, Oracle, and Microsoft SQL Server database. Object-oriented model. This type of computer's database supports the storage of all data types. The data is stored in the form of objects. The objects to be held in the database have attributes and methods that define what to do with the data. PostgreSQL is an example of an object-oriented relational DBMS.
If getting your learning started is half the battle, what if you could do that for free? Visit SkillUp by Simplilearn. Click on the link in the description to know more.
Now we come to the applications of DBMS. There are different industries having the application of DBMS. Like telecom industry, there is a database to keep track of the information regarding calls made, network usage, customer details, etc. Without the database systems, it is hard to maintain that huge amount of data that keeps updating every millisecond. Manufacturing industry, where it is a manufacturing unit, warehouse, or distribution center. Each one needs a database to keep the records of ins and outs. For example, distribution center should keep a track of the product units that supplied into the center as well as the products that got delivered out from the distribution center on each day. This is where DBMS comes into picture. Banking system. For storing customer info, tracking day-to-day credit and debit transactions, generating bank statements, etc. All this work has been done with the help of database management systems. Sales. to store customer information, product information, and invoice details. Airlines. To travel through airlines, we make early reservations. This reservation information along with flight schedule is stored in database. Education sector. Database systems are frequently used in schools and colleges to store and retrieve the data regarding student details, staff details, course details, exams details, payroll data, attendance details, fee details, etc. This is a hell lot amount of interrelated data that needs to be stored and retrieved in an efficient manner. Online shopping. You must be aware of the online shopping websites such as Amazon, Flipkart, etc. These sites store the product information, your addresses and preferences, credit details, and provide you the relevant list of products based on your query. All this involves a database management system. Compared to the flat file system data, the database management system has many advantages. Some of these advantages are reducing data redundancy. The file-based data management systems contain multiple files that were stored in many different locations in a system or even across multiple systems. Because of this, there were sometimes multiple copies of the same file, which lead to data redundancy. This is prevented in a database as there is a single database and any change in it is reflected immediately. Because of this, there is no chance of encountering duplicate data. Sharing of data. In a database, the users of the database can share the data among themselves. There are various levels of authorization to access the data, and consequently, the data can only be shared based on the correct authorization protocols being followed. Many remote users can also access the database simultaneously and share the data between themselves. Data integrity. Data integrity means that the data is accurate and consistent in the database. Data integrity is very important as there are multiple databases in a DBMS. So, it is necessary to ensure that the data is correct and consistent in all the databases and for all the users. Data security. Data security is a vital concept in a database. Only authorized users should be allowed to access the database and their identity should be authenticated using a username and password. Unauthorized users should not be allowed to access the database under any circumstances as it violates the integrity constraints. Privacy. The privacy rule in a database means only the authorized users can access a database according to its privacy constraints. There are levels of database access and a user can only view the data he is allowed to. For example, in social networking sites, access constraints are different for different accounts a user may want to access. Backup and recovery. Database management system automatically takes care of backup and recovery. The users don't need to backup data periodically because this is taken care of by the DBMS. Moreover, it also restores the database after a crash or system failure to its previous condition. Data consistency. Data consistency is ensured in a database because there is no data redundancy. All data appears consistently across the database and the data is the same for all the users viewing the database. Moreover, any changes made to the database are immediately reflected to all the users and there is no data inconsistency. Now we see what are the disadvantages of DBMS. First is high cost. The high cost of software and hardware is the main disadvantage of the database management system. Database users require a high-speed processor and a huge memory to use the database on the DBMS. Sometimes users require costly machines for maintaining databases. Organizations need a trained and highly paid technical database administrator for using and maintaining large database systems. Huge size. The size of the database is not big at the initial state, but when the user stores a large amount of data, then it creates many problems. Due to the huge data, database systems do not provide good results and do not run efficiently. That's why the size is another limitation of the database systems. Database failure. In the database systems, all the data or information of an organization is stored in one centralized database. If the database of that organization fails, then the data is lost and the organization will collapse. So database failure is a big problem with the database management system. Complexity. Database management system is also complex for non-technical users, so it isn't easy to manage and maintain database systems. Therefore, training for the designers, users, and administrators is necessary to efficiently run the database systems. Now, we will have a look at some popular database management softwares like MySQL, SQLite, PostgreSQL, Microsoft SQL Server, Oracle Database, and IBM Database 2.